So far, I've given you 8 different talks. You're the best class I've ever had. Okay? We've had 4 talks about the United States. Okay? Remember those? And we had so far 2 talks about the Earth and the Sun. And we have 1 more there about, the last one will be about global warming. And we've had 2 talks about health, 40 questions and answers about health and living a healthy lifestyle. And today we're going to do the last of that series, Introduction of the Human Body. Unlike the other talks, today I'm not giving you a sheet where you have to answer the questions, but I'm going to ask you a lot of questions, okay? And at the end, I'm going to invite you over to our house, okay? And to where we have a ranch with some horses. If you want, you can ride the horses, and we have some snacks for you. Okay? It's a nice day to take a walk. Okay? So, in 40 minutes, I'm going to tell you how doctors think. Okay? Sometimes they're not too sure how they think, but we do know that human beings are beautiful but complicated people, animals, and we get hurt and sick, and we need to have doctors and nurses to diagnose and treat these illnesses and injuries. Okay? But how do they know what to do? Oh, this is the problem. How do they know what to do? The basis of their knowledge is human anatomy, okay? But understanding the human body took a long time to develop. And there's been a long history of mistakes. And it started, one of the biggest mistakes was made by the Greeks. A long time ago, they had some strange ideas of what made up the world. It was made of 4 elements: fire, water, earth, and air. And the human body had 4 different fluids in them, okay? And when they were out of balance, you were sick. And so for more than 1,000 years after that, this led to the practice of bloodletting. So your fluids were out of balance, they would take your blood. This crazy idea, we think, killed our first American president, George Washington, a long time after the Greeks. He had a cold, and it took his blood several times, and he got weak and he died in 1799. The Romans also had some strange ideas about medicine. Their most famous doctor was Claudius Galen, who was a physician for the gladiators. He put them back together so they could fight again. But even though he understood some things about the human body, he never dissected human beings, only pigs and monkeys, and the church wouldn't let them do that. And so, even though he didn't really understand the human body, his writings were taken as a law of anatomy for hundreds of years afterwards, and this is like one of the early drawings. It shows that they totally misunderstood the respiratory system, the circulatory system, the digestive system is all wrong, and the urinary system. Maybe he understood muscles and bones, but he didn't understand any of that stuff. And it wasn't until hundreds of years later that an Englishman, William Harvey, began to dissect human beings. And he started, believe it or not, by dissecting his father and his sister after they died, okay? And this led to the English beginning to dissect people and see what was going on inside it. William Harvey solved the problem of circulation. But even today, medical students dissect cadavers, which is a dead body. And I did this when I went to medical school too. It's a very important part of understanding medicine is understanding anatomy. Anatomy is the foundation of medicine, and now we know that the human body has 11 body parts, body systems. Each system has its own organs, and the entire medical system is organized around anatomy, okay? So what are these systems? They're the skeletal system, muscular, circulatory, digestive, urinary systems, the nervous, reproductive, lymphatic, endocrine, respiratory systems, and the skin. Okay? So who is the specialist for the urinary system? The urologist. Who's the specialist for the nervous system? The neurologist. Who's the specialist for the endocrine system? The endocrinologist. It's organized that way. And we have one specialist for the whole body, the general or family practice doctor. So here's your take-home points from the introduction. The human anatomy has 11 systems. And the medical system is organized by these 11 medical systems. And doctors and nurses, they diagnose and treat this according to this system of thinking. So this is how doctors think, okay? So let's take a look at these 11 systems. We're going to start with the skeletal system, which has 206 bones. And your whole framework, your shape, is because of these bones. And these are held together by joints and cartilage, see? And ligaments, okay? But you have a couple of common problems that happen to the skeleton. You can get a fracture, arthritis, and a sprain. So here's the first question for you. What is wrong in this picture? This is an x-ray of the lower leg. What's wrong? It's broken. So you see there's actually two broken bones. There's the tibia and the fibula are both broken, but they're not just broken, they're displaced, which means they're no longer lined up together. So this is a bad fracture. And this means that the bones have to be reset before you put the gips on and hold them together, okay? So you see, when we're analyzing the skeletal system, the x-ray is really a crucial tool that we use all the time. Also, you can have rheumatoid arthritis where the immune system attacks the joints. And a sprained ankle, I think a lot of us have had this. That's when you damage the ligament holding the bones together. The muscular system are all attached to the bones by tendons. And I think I told you before there's like 10 or 11 major muscle groups. That's important for exercise, okay? Now, how many muscles do you have? A, 206, B, 525, C, more than 650, or D, more than 1,000? C. 250. All right, there's a 206. How many? All right, how many muscles do you think you have? You have a lot. The answer is more than 650 muscles. And without them, the bones can't move. So the bones give you your shape, and the muscles give you your movement. But you can get a muscle strain or a muscle tear. And a muscle strain, part of the muscle tears a little bit, like in a backache. But this guy, he tore his whole muscle, probably lifting weights. This is much more serious. The third system is the circulatory system, which means that the blood is continuously moving throughout the body. Like in this picture, you see there's red and there's blue, okay? The red means those are arteries carrying blood away from the heart, and the blue are veins carrying to the heart. So how many liters of blood do you have? Unfortunately, the answer is already there. 5 to 6 liters of blood. Okay? It takes about 2 or 3 for you to go into shock if you lose it. How many chambers does your heart, or Cerklje does your heart have? 4. And is there a pulse in your veins? No. Okay, so let's look at this. Each adult has 5 to 6 liters of blood. And it's made up of 3 parts. The biggest part is kind of a watery fluid which we call plasma, and it carries the nutrients and the hormones. The second little tiny part are the white blood cells and the platelets, and they fight infection and help you to clot your blood. And another big part is the red blood cells, and their main function is to carry oxygen. The heart has 4 chambers, okay? The right atrium and the right ventricle pump blood into your lungs, and when it comes back from the lungs, it goes into the left atrium and left ventricle, and it pumps the blood to your body through the aorta. There's a heartbeat in your arteries, but not your veins. Systole is when the heart muscle contracts, and diastole is when it relaxes. And so your blood pressure is 2 numbers. Okay? The highest and the lowest blood pressure in your arteries. Like a normal blood pressure would be what? Two numbers. 120 and 80. All right, 120 over 80 we say. So that's the highest and the lowest number, okay? So in your veins, you don't have a pulse, but your muscles are pushing the blood back to your heart, and they have little valves in them to stop the blood from going backwards. So what's the name of the doctor who specializes in the heart? Cardiologist. And the guy who specializes in the blood? Hematologist. So you see, for the heart, we have a couple of specialists because it's so important. But we can have a couple of big problems that happen in the circulatory system. High blood pressure, arterial sclerosis, and heart attack. We don't really know all the causes of high blood pressure, eating too much salt. When that happens, the artery gets really stiff, and it starts to damage your eye, your brain, your heart, and your kidneys. Arterial sclerosis is when you have too much bad cholesterol in your blood, okay, and it begins to form plaque, a buildup inside the artery. This should all be clean. And this is very fragile material, like an eggshell, and when it cracks, it forms a blood clot. And if you have a blood clot forming in what we call the coronary arteries around the heart, it will stop the blood from flowing to your heart, and you'll have a heart attack. Okay? So what is the definition of a heart attack? Irregular heart rhythm? No. Severe heart pain? No. Those are symptoms? Maybe. Part of the heart muscle dies? That's it. The heart muscle stops? Maybe, maybe not. But part of the heart muscle dies during a heart attack from lack of oxygen, and it's dead for the rest of your life. And so that's pretty serious. The fourth system is the respiratory system, which means you breathe in oxygen and you breathe out carbon dioxide. But your lungs have no muscles in them, so they're surrounded by muscles which pump the lungs. The diaphragm is underneath, and all around the lungs are ribs with rib muscles. The most important part of this respiratory system are the air sacs at the end of these tubes, which we call bronchi, and they're called alveoli, and they're small little bundles of material surrounded by arteries and veins. And the arteries are gathering in the oxygen, and the veins are bringing carbon dioxide back, and you breathe it out. But you can have an upper respiratory infection, pneumonia, which is a lower respiratory infection, lung cancer, and asthma. So usually we're dividing the respiratory system into 2 parts. This is the upper, and this is the lower. And so what are the symptoms of an upper respiratory infection, like a cold? we've all had colds, Frank Lyon, right? What's the symptoms of that? Sneezing, coughing, sore throat. High temperature, low temperature. Low high temperature. Not really high temperature, but low high.
Oh, yeah.
You're hurting a lot. Body aches. All these guys here. Sore throat, cough, sneeze, runny nose, watery eyes, body aches, mild headaches sometimes, mild fever, fatigue. Now this is a lower respiratory infection, pneumonia. Normally the air sac is full of air, but in pneumonia it fills up with fluid. So this right here is a normal chest x-ray, and we're taking chest x-rays a lot. It's a very common x-ray. You breathe in and you hold. And this is normal. And it's showing the spine, okay? These are the ribs. What do you think this is here? This is the heart, this is the diaphragm, this is the, what we call coochie inside. Okay, and all the black there is air inside your lungs. So that's normal. But look in this x-ray, all the bottom part, now this is the right side, is full of white color, which means it's full of fluid. So this person has pneumonia. This is another x-ray, but this is normal except for this. This right here, this big ball of dense material, is a cancer. And if we saw this in a picture, we would send you for an endoscope down the bronchus, take a sample of that cancer, and we would find out that you had small cell cancer of the lung, which is the most deadly cancer you could possibly have. And lung cancer is almost entirely caused by smoking. Asthma is happening more to children. Normally, the bronchus is open and you're letting the air go in and out. But because you have allergies, the bronchus gets filled up with all this mucus and the muscles around get tight and you can breathe in oxygen but you can't get it out. And you can die from this. I've seen children like this. They have to get medicine right away. The fifth system is the digestive system. This is what happens when we get hungry. And it goes from the mouth to the anus, okay? And it digests and absorbs food. So, how long are the large and small intestines? This is pretty long, 7.5 meters long, huh? And there's 5,600 kinds of bacteria. And there's 100 trillion bacteria in your intestines. So why are all these bacteria in your intestine? Because they're living in cooperation with you and eating your food. And most of this is good for you because it helps you to digest vitamins and it protects your intestinal skin, but sometimes it can be bad types. You know, you also have the liver, the gallbladder, and the pancreas. But you can get diarrhea, gallstones, which we call cholecystitis, hemorrhoids or colon cancer. Diarrhea is when you gotta go really fast, right? Okay. Normally, when your intestines are healthy, the water inside is going through into the blood. But when you get food poisoning or a virus, you have gastroenteritis, this gets all inflamed and the water doesn't go into your blood, it goes out. This is what causes diarrhea. Sometimes there's a chemical imbalance inside the gallbladder, and so it gets all filled up with these gallstones, and they sometimes go down these ducts and cause a lot of pain. So usually we recommend that you get that out, and people can live this fine with no gallbladder. Hemorrhoids are in the anus down here at the bottom. They're really just swollen veins. Most of the time they go away by themselves, but sometimes we do a little procedure to take care of that. And colon cancer is the second most deadly cancer after lung cancer. About 1 in 20 of us are going to get it. This guy has it. This is what it looks like on a colonoscope. And when you cut it out, that's it. Now the sixth system is the urinary system. Urine, you know what that means, right? The kidney, this filters out urine from the blood. The ureter sends the urine to the bladder, and then it goes out the urethra. You can get an infection there. You can have incontinence, which I'm going to show you. And you can have kidney failure. So you can get bacteria in here, and in your bladder, or in your urethra. And how many bacteria normally are in your bladder, or may hold? Not much. Usually there's none. Usually there's none. It's in your colon, it's millions and millions, billions and trillions. But in your bladder, there's none. So who gets more urinary tract infections, men or women? Women. But why is that? Women get a lot more. As a matter of fact, for the young women in this room, at least 50% of you are going to have a urinary tract infection in your life. Okay, and the reason is, yeah, you don't want them, it's going to happen. The urethra of the woman is much shorter than the urethra of the man. So the bacteria have a lot harder time going into the bladder in the men, but for the women it's very short. Urinary incontinence, like this dog has, you can't hold it anymore. Kidney failure has two causes. One is high blood pressure, the other is diabetes. The kidney gets smaller and smaller until it doesn't function. And the only way you can get urine out of your blood is to go on dialysis like this girl, 3 times a week. That's not a very nice life, but it keeps her alive. The endocrine system is a system of all these different types of glands. And can you point to your thyroid gland? Where's your thyroid, or your sheep meat cell? Yeah. All right. Everybody try and point. Where's the sheep meat cell? Here. So you see this bump here on both sides of that, and if you swallow, it goes up and down. And if you hold it on the sides, you can feel it going up and down. And that's one of your endocrine systems. The most common problem is diabetes. And we have a big epidemic of diabetes. Okay, there's 2 kinds. For children, it's type 1. All right. For some reason, the immune system attacks the pancreas. We don't know why. It doesn't produce insulin anymore. Or for adults, if you eat a long time the wrong foods, like I was telling you, sugar and simple carbohydrates, your whole body gets resistant to insulin, and that's the biggest form of type 2 diabetes. So you have high blood sugar, you need pills and insulin, and over the long time it damages your kidneys, and your eyes, and your circulation. I shouldn't have given you the answer here. How many? 6.5% of Slovenians have diabetes. And a lot more have pre-diabetes. In other words, they're right on the edge of getting it. That's a lot. Because it causes problems like dialysis. Here's this girl again. She has high blood pressure, but this can be caused by diabetes also. So how many Slovenians have to be on dialysis 3 times a week? A lot. 1,500. They cannot filter their own urine. And so their life restricted. They have to live close to a dialysis center. You know where the nearest dialysis center is in Slovenia to here? I think it's in Krki. Diabetes is a leading cause of blindness, a leading cause of leg amputations. First you get an ulcer like this, then your ankle gets infected, and pretty soon we're going to have to cut off your leg. So this is pretty serious stuff. We don't want to have that. We don't want to have heart attacks and some of the other problems. The nervous system is made up of the brain, the vertebrae, and the peripheral nerves. The brain has really two parts, the right and left half. And then there's a superhighway coming down, the vertebrae that delivers messages to and from the brain. And out to your arms and legs are all these peripheral nerves. Somebody cut all that out. The brain, how does the brain function? It's our central computer. It has 100 billion neurons or cells. And they're all connected to each other. And as you do different things and repeat and think about things, the connections get stronger between certain parts of your brain. And this gives you your memory, your consciousness, and things like that. But the brain is not all one thing altogether. There's different parts to the brain. The front part is where you think. This center part here is how you feel out to yourself. The back part is where you see. The center part here is how you hear. And this part down here is how you coordinate. And inside that area there is the ancient brain of the reptile, which keeps your heart beating and your temperature right and breathing. The brain is connected to 5 different organs: the eye, the nose, the ear, the tongue, and then you have sensors all around your body, okay? The nose, you only can taste 4 tastes: sweet, salt, sour, and bitter. But the nose, you can smell at least 1 million different types of smells. And so when you're tasting food, it's actually a combination of the two things together. But let's talk about this sense of touch. All right. Let's talk about 4 things you can do with your finger. Lift up your finger like this. And now touch your one finger to the other. Now you feel that? That's pressure. Feel the pressure? Right away you have pressure. Now take your fingernails and squeeze the other finger. That's pain. You feel the pain? If you push hard enough, not too hard. Now touch your finger to your neck up here. You can feel hot and cold. Now take your finger like this and move it back and forth. And you can sense position. All of this is done in your brain, and it's done by sensors that are inside your fingers and all throughout your whole body, connected by the nervous system to your brain. It's a wonderful system, really. But you can have a stroke or Mozgansky cough. You can have a big head or spinal injury, and older people can get Alzheimer's disease. So there's 2 kinds of stroke. One, you get a clot in the artery, the other bleeds into your brain. Or you can have serious brain damage, like what's happened to, who is this guy? Michael Schumacher. He injured his brain when he was skiing, even though he had a helmet. He hit it on rocks. And I don't know if he's still in a coma or not.
Still in coma. No?
No, but he's permanently injured, that's for sure. You can injure your spine in 2 ways. You can break it at the top. So look, 1, 2, 3, this guy broke the 3rd vertebrae in the neck. That means that he's lost the movement of his arms and his legs. He's permanently paralyzed. He can just use his mouth. Or this guy broke his vertebrae lower down because he was in a motorcycle accident, and so he can move his arms, but his legs are permanently paralyzed. So how many paraplegics do we have in Slovenia? We have 1,500 people who are on dialysis. Oh wait, I'll come back. There's 1,000 members of the Slovenian Paraplegic Association. The definition of a stroke is when part of the brain dies. Just like the heart, part of the heart dies, part of the brain dies. Okay? And if it doesn't come back in 9 months, it's gone. You can be permanently paralyzed because of that too. So now we talk about the reproductive system. For women, they produce eggs, and for men, we produce sperm. For women, they have two hormones which make them a woman, estrogen and progesterone. And for men, we have one that makes us a man, and that's testosterone. But you can have HIV, which is sexually transmitted. If one person has HIV and you have sex with that person, you can get the HIV. Or the women can develop breast cancer. This is HIV. This is the virus. This is what it looks like. And once you get that, if it's not treated, it will destroy your immune system. We can treat it, but we cannot cure it. That's how, and we've been trying to cure it for a good 25 years. 40 million people in the world have died already of AIDS. So this is a major epidemic in the world, and 35 million more already have AIDS. Look at this, all of Southern Africa, there's 15 to 35% of people in Southern Africa have HIV. And 5 to 15% of the rest of the Africans, the people in Russia and Cambodia and Haiti and a few other countries, they have HIV. So HIV is very serious. And then there's breast cancer, which is the most common cancer for women. It spreads through the lymph system. Do I get one too? Okay, can you open that later, right? So the lymph system is a whole system which filters and transports lymph. So I showed you your veins and your arteries, but there's another system of fluid in your body too. It's called the lymph system, and it's made up of canals, and it's made up of different lymph nodes. Like in your neck, for instance, you have lymph nodes. And they're connected together by little canals, and when you get an infection, it can get big, like this boy here, he's got a big infected lymph node here, okay? So how many lymph nodes do you have in your body? If I give you the answer, it's going to give you the answer. 10 to 20, 20 to 40, 3 to 400, 6 to 700, more than 1,000. 6 to 700 lymph nodes. And what's the largest lymph node in your whole body? You know the answer, but you don't. It's called the Brahmin. The spleen is the biggest lymph node, and its job is to filter your blood and your lymph. Are we okay?
Yeah, there's a big
Oh yeah. Let him be? Okay. The last system we call the integumentary system. It's really the skin. It's the largest organ in your body. It has 3 layers. Epidermis. Hold up while we're doing this That was the nervous system and the brain in action.
Oh yeah, brain in action.
Brain in action. Okay, the skin, all right, the skin. It has 3 layers. The epidermis, the big layer of dermis, where all your nerves and your blood vessels and your sweat glands are, and the bottom layer, which is mostly fat. We also include the hair and the nails as part of that system. It regulates your temperature, protects you from injuries and pathogens. But you can have athlete's foot, warts, burns, abrasions, and cuts. Athlete's foot is a fungus. Warts is a virus. You can have 3 types of burns. First degree is very shallow. It just goes through part of the epidermis. Second degree is much more serious and is very painful. It goes through the dermis. And third degree is the most serious and is not painful and burns all the way through and wipes out all your nerves, which is why you're feeling it. And it's by far the most dangerous. So you can scrape yourself, which we call an abrasion, or you can cut yourself. So this is bad enough that we would want to suture this together so it would heal in a nice way. It would heal otherwise, but it would look to be an ugly scar at the end. So in conclusion, the modern medicine is organized according to human anatomy. And today I've told you about 30 different about medicine already. But there's a lot more, and some are very rare, and a doctor is first trained in anatomy, in physiology, how this all works, and then they're trained about the symptoms of these diseases. What are the diseases, the symptoms, how to treat and test and diagnose them, and how to give medicine. And this is a pretty hard and challenging job, but it has a lot of rewards, and one of the best is helping people, okay? And always we have to remember when we're thinking about these 11 systems, they're connected together into one person. And this is why I gave you a talk before about healthy lifestyle, eating the right healthy food and getting enough exercise. This has a good influence on everything. It's the best way to keep your health. So you're going to soon be entering the workforce in a couple years. What are the 3 professions most in demand in Europe? Professions, not just jobs. Here they are: doctors and nurses, engineers, and computer designers and programmers. Those are the 3 things that are most in demand in Europe. So training to be a doctor is something maybe you should consider if you would like thinking like what this presentation today. And it might be a good career choice for you. So now, these are the final questions. And each of these body systems, start with the skeletal system. Give me, in the skeletal system, one bone and something that can happen to that bone. What's the name of one bone?
Skull.
Skull?
What can happen to that bone?
It can be fractured.
The skull can be fractured and cause very serious brain injury. That's true. The lower leg, I told you, had the tibia and the fibula, remember? Both of them were broken. Okay, now what is one organ of the circulatory system?
Heart.
All right, the heart. And what can happen to the heart? Heart attack. And what about the respiratory system? One organ of the respiratory system.
Lungs.
The lungs. And what can happen to your lungs?
Lung cancer.
Lung cancer. Lung cancer. Huh?
She said asthma.
I'll tell you what, when I ask you, raise your hand, okay? All right, what can happen to your, besides lung cancer? Yeah?
Lungs can get inflamed. You can get something on the letter P. I forgot what it is.
You can get asthma. You said that before.
No, she needs pneumonia. Yeah,
But she said starting with letter P.
Pneumonia.
Pneumonia. Oh, something with a P. Yeah, but the P is silent, so you say pneumonia.
And something that like fluid instead of air is in your lungs.
That's that.
Oh, that's that?
Yeah. Inflammation of like the upper part of the system.
Yeah, you can get inflammation, or which can be a bacteria or a virus, up here in the upper part of your respiratory system. It can be in your sinuses, it can be in your nose, it can be in your throat, and your tonsils, and all of that. And a lot of times we just call that a cold, but it depends on where it is, how bad that cold's going to be. All right, what about the digestive system? Besides just the stomach, because we're always thinking about how hungry we are. What's one of the organs of the digestive system? Yeah.
Liver, and
A little bit louder because I'm partly deaf.
liver.
Huh?
Livers.
The liver is part of the digestive system, right? And what can go wrong, I say, with the liver? What can go wrong with the liver?
Well, it stopped working. I mean, if you have like low or high blood pressure, and yeah, well, if it gets smaller and smaller, then it stops working.
The high blood pressure usually affects the kidneys,
Oh.
and not the liver. But the liver can stop functioning too, for another reason. Usually we call that cirrhosis of the liver from drinking a lot of alcohol. And it gets more and more smaller and fibrous tissue. It doesn't work enough. Or it can get cancer too. All right, what about the urinary system? What's one organ of the urinary system? What's part of the urinary system? You could give the Slovenian word for it if you want. Mehur. Okay. Who said mehur? Okay, mehur, which is the bladder. Okay, mehur bladder. That's why I gave it, because sometimes these words are hard to. All right. So what can happen to the mehur? They can get sick. Normally, it doesn't have any bacteria in it. So you can get a bacteria in there, and it can cause a lot of pain, and it can change the color of your urine, which it should be kind of clean yellow color, but it can make it very cloudy. It can be pretty serious. Also the kidneys you talked about before. Blood pressure can affect them where they don't filter your urine anymore. What about the endocrine system? Hormones. This is maybe the hardest one. What's one organ in the endocrine system? Yeah. So what's this one? You can give it in Slovenia. Sheet, huh? So what's it in English? Thyroid gland. All right. What can happen to that?
The hormones could get imbalanced.
Hmm?
The hormones could get imbalanced.
All right, the hormones can get imbalanced. And so that can happen because your immune system will sometimes attack your thyroid gland. And the most common disease of that when it first attacks it, it begins producing more and more hormones, and you get what we call hyperthyroiditis. And then it begins to die, and then the opposite happens. You get hypothyroiditis. So people are shaky like this, and then in the end, they don't have any energy. Uh-oh. Do you want to say something?
No, I have this.
Oh, you have this, yeah. There's a name for that disease. Hashimoto. But also, the most common problem happens to your, when you have diabetes. Okay? This is the most common problem. And this is the one that's in a big epidemic. Okay, so that's the end of all these questions. And the end of This would be the hardest talk about.